everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you for this 60-minute program. It's called Awakening Your Power to Self-Regulate, Longevity, Deep Intuition, Resilience and Healing, New Discoveries that Empower Your Body and Your Life. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and I'm here with our special guest, best-selling author, scientist, and visionary, Gregg Braden. This program is part of our special webinar series called Accelerating Your Evolution Through Science, Leading Edge Discoveries that will improve every area of your life and the world. That also features webinars with cellular biologist Bruce Lipton and heart math leaders Deborah Rosman and Howard Martin. Thanks so much for joining us. We've got a really powerful program in store for you. As we get started, I'm going to give Gregg a proper introduction. Gregg Braden is a 5-time New York Times bestselling author and is internationally renowned as a pioneer in bridging science, spirituality, and human potential. From 1979 to 1990, Gregg worked for Fortune 500 companies such as Cisco Systems, Phillips Petroleum, and Martin Marietta Aerospace as a problem solver during times of crisis. He continues problem solving today as he weaves modern science and the wisdom preserved in remote monasteries and forgotten texts into real-world solutions. His discoveries have led to 12 award-winning books now published in over 40 languages. Gregg has shared his presentations with the United Nations, Fortune 500 companies, and the US military. And he is now featured in media specials airing on major networks throughout the world. The United Kingdom's Watkins Journal lists Gregg among the top 100 of the world's most spiritually influential living people for the 5th consecutive year. And he was a 2017 nominee for the prestigious Templeton Award. This award is designed to honor a living nominee who has made an exceptional contribution beyond the realm of material science to affirming life's spiritual dimension. Before we dive in with Gregg, I want to let you know that near the end of this webinar, we're going to tell you about our exciting new 8-week master's program that also features Gregg along with Bruce Lipton, Deborah Rosman, and Howard Martin, both, of course, with heart math. So more on that later. We'll get into that a little later. But right now, let's jump in with Gregg and get to the exciting topics that we've planned for you during this hour. And Gregg, let me just welcome you first. Great to have you with me.
Steve, thank you so much. I am so excited to be, I'm excited to be a part of this course. I'm really honored to share this course with dear friends and colleagues. Of course, Dr. Bruce Lipton and I, we've known each other, we've lost track. It's over 20 years. We've toured all over the world together. Howard Martin and Dr. Deborah Rosman from the Institute of Heart Math. We also have toured and worked together. And, you know, I'm honored not only to work with these people, but now I get to call them my friends. And we are very different in what we bring to the table. We're all working for the same thing. We're working to help us to become better people and create a better world. So Steve, I want to thank you and Humanities Team for your vision in putting something like this together. You know, it's a lot easier not to do a program like this than it is to go through all of the planning and logistics and the risk to do something like this. And you and your colleagues have stepped right up to the plate. And I am just so grateful, so appreciative, and really excited about the difference that this program brings to the table, how it's different from other programs that all of us have done together before. And I want to talk about that as we go into this. So thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate you tremendously.
Hey, well, back at you, Gregg. Thanks for being with us. And for people that don't know, wow, Gregg has such an incredibly busy schedule as he travels the world with this really very important wisdom that he's sharing, incredibly important wisdom. And by the way, if you haven't bought his book, The Human by Design, you should buy this book. There's an amazing wisdom in the book, and some of that we're going to get to here, actually, during the hour. So, Gregg, let me jump in here with the first one first question I was going to pose for you.
Sure.
And it's that how do we support your built-in longevity mechanism by working with the way you actually age and following procedures that release the life-extending enzyme telomerase in your body?
Well, you know, Steve, the program I'm going to be offering, I just want to say this as a preface to all of the answers that we're going to do, I'm going to offer right now. Everything that I'm going to be sharing in this program is based upon peer-reviewed science. So for our viewers that may not be familiar with quite what that means, It means it's more than a theory or a hypothesis that someone has put up on the internet, on YouTube or, on some internet chat room. Peer-reviewed science is the work, the scholarly research of scientists. Many of them are multidisciplinary scientists. Once they make a discovery and they believe they understand something to a greater degree than we have in the past, what they do is they circulate that among their peers, hence the term peer-reviewed, and their peers take the opportunity to either shoot that idea down and find out where the holes are, or to support the idea because it is based upon things that they found to be true as well. So I'm going to be sharing discoveries based upon peer-reviewed science that change the way we think, Steve, about ourselves, our relationship to our world and our own bodies, such as the question you've just asked. So I just want our viewers to know that these discoveries, they are published in peer-reviewed journals. Many of them are very obscure journals that very few people get to see. And a lot of the scientists simply don't have the platform that you and I are creating right now. So they don't have any way to share this information. So I'm saying this because a lot of this you're not going to find in the mainstream. It's not in mainstream classrooms, mainstream textbooks, mainstream documentaries on the one hand. On the other hand, it changes the way we think, the way we heal, the way we live, the way we solve our problems. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as we go through these discussions, because people are going to say, how come I've never heard about this? Or if I Google it, I'm not finding much about it in Google, or whatever your search engine is. And this is the reason why. So does that make sense, Steve? Or any questions about that?
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that in, because this is something Bruce emphasizes, as you know.
Yeah.
Well, is that among scientists, they say, of course, I know that. But this information is not out in the mainstream. And so while scientists have been in the lab understanding this in the mainstream, there's an absence of knowledge and wisdom, and that's hurting us, which is why we're bringing this program.
It is, and this is why I appreciate you so much, Steve, because in many cases, there is, I think it's fair to say, there is a reluctance to share some of these discoveries because they change the story and they make us think differently about what it is that we've been taught. And in some cases, and I personally have experienced this, there's a resistance to sharing these discoveries, and especially when it comes to big topics like human evolution and the role that DNA plays in the evolution. All of those things I'm going to be talking about in this series. So I just wanted to lay that out up front. And now I'm going to answer the question specifically. 2009 is not that long ago. And 2009 is when the Nobel Prize in Science and Medicine, Physiology and Medicine, was awarded for the discovery of an enzyme that lives in every one of our bodies, Steve. So it's not like this is relegated only to monks or nuns or yogis or mystics living on a mountaintop in a monastery halfway around the world. We all have a very specific enzyme in our bodies whose sole purpose it is to heal and repair and rejuvenate the portions of the DNA that are used as a biological marker to determine human aging. So I know there's a whole lot in that sentence. Let me unpack that just a little bit. On the ends of our chromosomes are specialized portions of DNA, and I know many of our viewers are very familiar with this. They're called telomeres or telomeres, and I've heard it pronounced both ways in the science conferences. These are specialized portions of the DNA whose sole function it is to protect the DNA when the cell divides. When a cell divides, those chromosomes divide so that we have the same complement of the chromosome in each of the new cells. The problem is that when that division happens, the division does not complete along the axis of the entire chromosome, and nature accommodates that by creating this specialized portion of the DNA so that if something is left behind, if a portion of the DNA is not copied, it's not the vital information inside, it's these telomeres on the ends. When we're born, we have a full complement of these telomeres. By the time we're 35, we're down to about a half of what we had. And by the time we're in our 60s, we're down to less than a third, typically. And here's the good news, Steve. The discovery that you asked me about in 2009, the discovery is of an enzyme that can be activated at any time in our lives to do three things. First of all, to repair whatever damage has occurred to those telomeres, number one. Number two, to stop the degradation of those telomeres. And number three, to actually build them, to add new information onto the ends of these telomeres so that in effect, according to the biological marker, we become younger when it comes to looking at the DNA. So we all have this enzyme. It is called telomerase or telomerase. Again, I've heard it pronounced both ways. Scientists knew about it. They just didn't know exactly what it did. And it was Carol Greider and a research team at Stanford University that began looking at where this enzyme is located. And they realized the enzyme's only located at the ends, near the ends of the telomeres. And they thought maybe there's a correlation there. And their work led them to understand that the role of the telomerase is to stop the degradation, to heal and repair, and then actually rebuild, rejuvenate those telomeres. So in effect, our cells can become younger according to these biological markers, regardless of our chronological age. And it is relatively easy to activate this enzyme, this longevity enzyme, as well as other factors through things. Some things are very familiar to us, lifestyle. So certainly nutrition, certainly movement, certain kinds of exercise, but it's all about the environment, external and internal. And we talk about internal environment, we're talking about thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs. This ties right into the work of another, one of my colleagues who will be in this series, Dr. Bruce Lipton, as well as the folks of HeartMath. So there are many places where we're going to see this dovetailing, beautiful dovetailing, a synergy of the work, because I think when something's true, certainly it's going to show up in a lot of ways in a lot of different places. And that's why this team has come together to bring this to you, our viewers, in ways that you typically are not seeing. So it's a long answer to a short question, Steve. It's about activating the telomerase and allowing that enzyme to do what it is designed to do, to give new life and healing to the DNA that is at the very core of our existence.
Wow, fabulous. What a way to get started here. We're really setting the table as well for this whole hour-long conversation. Thank you, Greg. Okay, let me get to the second question that I want to bring to you. Then how do we use the techniques of ancient teachers who employed mirror neurons to catapult their students beyond their perceived limitations?
This is another one of those discoveries, Steve. Now you think about it, this is the year 2018. And we're talking about discoveries that have been made between the year 2001 and 2009. So these are relatively new when it comes to the human body. You know, science and scientists, medical science specifically, we have done transplants of organs and we've done very complex surgeries successfully for so long. The thinking has been that these successes are as they are because we understand pretty much all there is to know about the human body. So to see these new discoveries coming along so late in the game, it's exciting for me. It is powerful, it's controversial, and a lot of this, again, you're not seeing in the mainstream. So what you just asked me about, 2004, Italian scientists discovered a specialized neuron in specific places in the human brain. The common name for these is called mirror neurons. Now this is very, very controversial. So let me share the science, and then I'm going to share with you where I go beyond the science. I'm going to share some things, my opinion, that is not necessarily peer-reviewed, but I'm going to start with the peer-reviewed information. So mirror neurons, what the science is now telling us is these neurons will fire when we're having an experience. So I'm a musician, for example. When I'm playing the guitar, my mirror neurons, you know, they're firing away. Or if I'm watching, I was a martial artist when I was younger. I still am. I was a gymnast when I was younger. I was a runner. When I see people doing those things, and I'm having the experience. So when I'm running, I'm performing the martial arts. I'm doing the gymnastics. My mirror neurons are firing away. No surprise there. Here's where it gets really interesting. The science found is that our mirror neurons will fire both when we have the experience as well as when we witness someone else having the experience, even though we're not having it. So this is why, I mean, we can lie on the couch on a Sunday afternoon watching a soccer game, So we're lying down, we're prone, motionless, relaxing, supposedly. And when something's happening with that soccer game, our heart begins to beat, we may begin to perspire, our muscles tense. And you think about this, I mean, we all know it's true, but think about the mechanism. Why would that be? We're just lying there. We're not in the soccer game. Here's the deal. The mirror neuron does not know the difference between having the experience and witnessing the experience. And that is one powerful, and in my opinion, tremendously underrated ability, extraordinary ability that we all have. And you asked the question, Steve, about mystics and how they use this. Here's where this gets really, really interesting. In my studies with ancient indigenous traditions, with the indigenous peoples of the world, when they wanted to teach their students something that pushed them, catapulted them beyond the limits of what those individuals had been conditioned to believe about themselves, what the teachers would do is they would demonstrate an extraordinary feat. Martial artists may break a stack of bricks. You know, we've seen people experience and walk on fire. We've seen the yogis in Tibet that actually push their hands into the rock of the cave walls and continue pushing as if that rock is not there. And with all of these, what happens when the students see these, they have to change the way they think to accommodate what they have seen. The mirror neurons don't know the difference between witnessing and experiencing. What this means when it comes to our personal healing, for example, when we close our eyes and we go into those deep meditative states, are we focused on the disease or the illness? Or if we are focusing upon the healing that we know is possible, if we focus on the healing, the mirror neurons don't know the difference. They will send the signals to the brain and the heart and the body to begin producing the chemistry that matches what the mirror neurons are seeing. So I'm just scratching the surface. This is an entire module. I'm really excited to share this. And again, in my opinion, it is a tremendously underrated potential that we all have. And it goes far beyond what we have the opportunity to talk about in this brief period here, Steve.
Wow, yeah. So when we talk about catapulting people beyond their perceived limitations, we've talked about two things already that are huge, 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 huge. And you know, again, as I've mentioned and as Greg has mentioned, we're going to come back and talk about a program, brand new program that we've been working months on that's going to go a lot deeper into these things. But let's go to the third thing here, which is another really cool one, Greg, and this is accessing specialized cells in the human heart to awaken extraordinary abilities previously only available to monks, yogis, and mystics.
Absolutely, and this is one of the places I mentioned the overlap between myself and my colleagues. This is where the Institute of Heart Math, there's a tremendous overlap between what I'm sharing and what they're doing, although we do it in very different and very unique ways, and that's why everyone learns differently, Steve, and this is something, this is 2018, this is the 34th year that I have done this work in one form or another, and I don't know where the time has gone, but one of the things I've found, everyone learns differently. And some people are very left brain, some are very right brain, some like the science, some just say, you know, just tell me what to do. And so we've designed this course and the overlap in some of the discoveries because of the different approaches and how we go about doing these. And this discovery is one of those, 1991. So again, this is relatively recently. 1991, scientists discovered 40,000 approximately, 40,000 specialized cells in the human heart. They are called sensory neurites. They are essentially brain-like cells, but they're not in the cranial brain, they're in the heart. But they function in a very similar capacity to the neurons in the brain. These sensory neurites in the heart, they think independently of the cranial brain. They feel independently of the cranial brain. This is a big one. They remember independently of the cranial brain. And what that means for every one of us, we all have experienced some form of trauma in our lives, consciously or subconsciously, in the womb, after birth, in our childhood, or even as adults. At some point, something happens that we don't have the tools to deal with, and our body interprets that as trauma. So when we don't have the tools to deal with it, we will put those memories away, and ideally, until we have the tools to deal with them, some people never deal with them, so the problems will show up in other ways in the body. And we all have gone through therapy or counseling or conversations with friends or loved ones to help us deal with these things, therapy formally or informally. And we often do it from the mind, and we get as far as we can get with that kind of therapy in the mind, whether it's talking with friends or lovers or spouses or counselors that are trained or therapists trained to do this or not. And you say, okay, I've gone as far as I can, but something seems to be missing. This discovery tells us what it may be, because we address the memories in the mind. What about the memories in the heart? These 40,000 specialized cells are concentrated in the heart in a way that is actually called the little brain in the heart. This is what scientists are calling it, the little brain in the heart. So when we go to reconcile and resolve the experiences of the past that may be impacting our lives today, if the experiences aren't bothering us, maybe there's no need to look at them, but those traumas have a way of showing up later in life in unexpected ways. And if, I'm just going to talk to our viewers, if you've taken your healing as far as you can go through your mind and through traditional methods, and you feel there's something missing, this may be the missing piece, because our heart has a memory that rarely is acknowledged. And when we begin to acknowledge that memory, it's like a switch goes off, and it makes all the difference in the world in terms of the resolution of the hurt of the past. And whether we like it or not, we all have experienced that hurt. It makes us who we are today. So I would like to say much more, Steve. I know we're limited on time, so I'm going to stop there and say this discovery of these 40,000 neurites and how we may harmonize these cells in our heart with the cells in our brain to create an optimal state of consciousness that is called heart-brain coherence. I've learned about this from indigenous people, from mystics, healers, curanderos, shamans, from Tibet and Nepal and India to the Yucatan to the Southern Andes to the American Desert Southwest. People at HeartMath have taken this into the laboratory to validate what it is that's happening and hone in on the things that work. Let's do more of them. The things that don't work, let's do less of them. And so we're going to bring all of this together to cover this one topic.
Wow, fabulous. How did we ever start thinking of the heart as a pump, as simply a pump, Gregg? Because yeah. as you bring in this body of work that you were involved in your research, and as you mentioned, also HeartMath's research, the heart clearly is so much more than a pump, isn't it?
Well, it goes back the early part of the 19th century, actually. And the idea was that the heart is simply a pump, and we all know that the heart pumps really well, but you can build a machine to do that. And what these new discoveries are telling us is that the heart, the pump action of the heart may be the least of what our hearts do. We've all heard that the brain is the master organ in the body. What the new studies now are showing, Steve, is while the brain is important and the brain sends the signals to the rest of the body to tell us what to do, the brain receives many of its instructions from the heart. And those instructions are based upon our perceptions, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs. All of a sudden, it puts us in the driver's seat. And that's where the self-regulation comes in. Very, very exciting.
Yeah, boy, let me just mention to viewers here too, Gregg, that of course, this is one of the huge dimensions of this new program where we really get into, this might be somewhat of an abstract notion that we're talking about here now, but it won't be abstract any longer if you go through this program that involves Gregg, Bruce, and the HeartMath people, where it's really getting into the whole function of how we live, really more in the place of the heart, and we learn to become conscious so that when our mental and emotional self just runs away with it, which so often happens in today's modern day world, we say, oh, it's happening again, and we create these processes to come back into this wisdom of the heart, this living and breathing from the heart. But a lot more on that later. Gregg, let me, so this is exciting. Let me come now to question number 4 here, telling the difference between instinct and intuition and understanding the deeper language of intuition inside your own body.
I love to see, this is like the lightning round of science and spirituality is what we're doing right now. It's like boom, 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 just tell me this, tell me this. And it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying, this is my passion, to be able to share these discoveries in our lives, because it changes the way we live day in and day out. And I think all of us know our world is changing, and there are reasons for that change that I've talked about in other programs. The convergence of cycles that are shifting our society, that are shifting the way that we've got to solve our problems. We've got to think differently, Steve, than we ever have. And because the context of the world has changed, so that the way that we've always solved problems in the past must change as well. And what we're doing is we're offering the keys based upon peer-reviewed science to help us to do just that, to give us the reason to think differently about ourselves. So I'm enjoying this tremendously. Instinct versus intuition. This is a big one. You know, I'm asked this question so often in our live events, and people say, well, aren't they the same thing? And for many people, the belief is that instinct and intuition are the same. What I'd like to say is they're closely related, but they're two very different things. Instinct is a response that is hardwired within us. It's hardwired in our consciousness, in our psyche, ultimately even in our nervous system, whereas intuition is not hardwired. Intuition takes into account many present simultaneous factors, including instinct. So let me just give an example. Instinct. Throughout the course of human existence, more often than not, unfortunately, it has been true that for a woman to walk down an unlighted street in a strange town alone late at night has not been a safe thing to do. Is that a fair statement, Steve? Would you say that's fair?
That's a fair statement, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, and especially, you know, when you think about 200,000 years of human existence. We've been around 200,000 years. So there is, and men as well. This is true for men as well in different ways. But both for males and females, the thinking is, if you have the opportunity to walk down a lighted street or a dark street, if you're out in the open or you're in an alley, if it's late at night or during the day, and if you're in a familiar city or a strange city, we have very, very different ways of responding. Now, here's where this gets interesting, if you really think about this. We can be in a strange town, late at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, a dark alley, taking a shortcut to the hotel, and our logic says I would be at the hotel much faster if I go down this dark alley because the hotel is right there. Even if we personally have never had a bad experience, our instinct will say it's not a good idea because we're drawing upon the cumulative, the collective experience, the subconscious psyche that permeates, it's transmitted through DNA and the way that we think about ourselves. So we are drawing upon the experiences of all those who have come before us, even though we personally may never have had a bad experience. That's instinct. It's hardwired to keep us safe. Intuition can certainly take instinct into account, but intuition also takes into account street smarts. It takes into account the energy, the vibe, if you will, in the moment. Those 40,000 specialized cells in the human heart are tuned to a field. And that field, if we learn to honor and trust what that field says to us, it is always informing us of what is true in the moment for us, not what has been true collectively for hundreds of thousands of years for other people in the past. So the intuition might say, okay, there's a dark alley, shortcut to the hotel. Most people, you know, probably wouldn't do that. But in this instance, I can see daylight on the other side. There's nobody else in that alley. And it feels to me, it feels like it's okay this one time. And intuition would tell us it's okay to take that shortcut to get back to the hotel a little closer, a little faster. So intuition works subconsciously, and our subconscious is much faster than our thinking mind, all right? So intuition subconsciously is assessing our environment, it's assessing the situation, and it is also taking into account the instinct of the past as one of many factors. So again, we can go on and on about that. The question is, how do you know? How do you listen to your heart? And how do you know when your heart is speaking to you truthfully, honestly, directly? Or how do you know that the voice that you're hearing is actually coming from your heart? Or is it coming from somewhere else? Is it the voice of your parents? You know, but subconsciously, is it the voice of a spirit guide, you know, telling you not to do something? Is it the voice of your ego? Is it the voice of fear? All really good questions. They're all related, and it all comes down to how we interpret the messages from our heart. And that's what we're going to get into in this course.
Well, fabulous. Well, we're certainly getting to some perennial wisdom here, newly developed, I'll call it, or you know, at least in terms of the peer-reviewed science that is surfacing all of this. This is really extraordinary.
Well, Steve, well, I want to say about that, you know, the science. First, I'm going to say I'm a scientist. I'm a geologist by degree. I've got a very strong background in the life sciences, so molecular biology, molecular chemistry. I was an ocean sciences major, marine biology, along with marine geology. And the reason I say that is because as a scientist, two things. First of all, many of the things that I'm offering are very, very different from what I was trained to accept as a scientist. Now, I'm going to be the first to admit that. And we owe it to ourselves to question. We owe it to ourselves to do due diligence. And that's why I'm going to give references to where this research comes from so you all can do your due diligence. If I say something to you and you say, no way, how come I don't know about that? I'm going to give you the reference so you can go check it out. And if you've got a problem with the information, it's not with me, it's with the science, because this is what the science is saying. Number one, it is very different than what I've been taught. But number two, the other thing that I want to say about this is the science can only tell us the nuts and bolts of how something works. And that's all science is designed to do. Science can only tell us how something works. The way that we apply that something in our lives, that is where we draw upon the wisdom of our ancestors. Human experience, 5,000 years of recorded human history, has had the opportunity to apply these things. So how we apply it, that is up to us. And this is what sets this course apart from other courses, Steve. I'm going to be talking about the application, but for me personally, how have I applied these things in my life, in addition to the science that tells me that they're true?
Well, yeah, and I can't wait to get to that, which we will just in a moment, viewers.
Oh, okay.
Let me first just share a couple quick things. One, as Gregg points out, Darwin was a geologist, and Gregg is a geologist. So, you know, when Gregg talks about science and peer-reviewed science and so on, you know, most people want to go all the way back and talk about what Darwin's work was. You know, I would suggest that Gregg's work is a whole lot more important now. This contemporary work he's done, where this combining problem solving with science, it's extraordinary, because it really, when we talk about catapulting people beyond limiting beliefs, that sounds like it might be marketing language mumbo jumbo. It is not. This is real. Truly, this is real. And we'll share more. I want to just also say one other thing, Gregg, at this point, that I so much appreciate about you is, you know, you've got all these friends in the science community, and you talk about this this arc that was never bridged between mammal and man, and that and actually you go a lot deeper in talking about the science of man and how it's quite different, and for 2,000 years has been, and it's that there is no arc, there is no connection, and just the courage, I want to just say, that you have to have done this work and to stay connected to scientists who, as you mentioned in your book, they back away from you when you share, you know, this is really, let's talk about what is true. So I want to thank you for that. I really applaud you for that, because this science is so badly needed now when we've got all of these challenges, both individually and collectively. And I think you have created a very strong way out through the science and body of work that you've done.
Thank you, Steve. You know, for me, it comes down to one fundamental question that I asked myself 33 plus years ago. And the question is simply this: our world is changing. How can we embrace that change in a healthy way unless we're honest with ourselves about the change? Unless we're honest with ourselves about our origin, our history, our past, unless we're honest with what the evidence is saying to us, how can we possibly embrace this change and not just survive, but thrive? That's the key. How do we thrive in this new world in a really healthy way? And my answer to that question is what we're doing here. It's by being honest with what the science is sharing with us. And when I deviate from that, when I say, okay, here's the science, and now here's what I think it means to me, I'm going to be really straight with you, my viewers. I'm going to be honest about where I separate my opinions from the science, so you can make those delineations on your own. So thank you for acknowledging that, Steve. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Well, and that's the beautiful thing about today's program, and the program we're going to talk about is there's an underlying science, a cement foundation, if you will, underneath of this that is really creating an incredibly empowering path for us individually and collectively. But let me get to this last question that I want to pose for you here, Gregg, and it's approaching life knowing that your body is designed to constantly repair, rejuvenate, and heal, creating chemistry in your cells that mirrors that awareness. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but
Sure.
we can come back and go deeper here.
Yeah, I'm going to begin. There's a fundamental difference in the way that we have, between the way that we have been taught to think about ourselves and what the science is telling us about the way we actually function. And so everything that I'm going to do in the course, the way I'm going to answer this question, it all comes down to this fundamental difference. So let me just lay out this way of thinking first, if you will, Steve. We have been taught that life, we come into this world, so you can think of it this way. The two very different models. We've been taught that we come into this world as a vessel that has X amount of life, and we don't know how much that is. And we go through our lives day after day after day, and each day we use up a little bit of that life until we reach a point where we've depleted the vessel and we can no longer sustain ourselves. And we call that old age, senescence, and ultimately we call it death. Okay, that is a conventional, it's called a standard model. It's a conventional way of thinking. What the science is showing us now is that there is another model that offers us a very, very different sense of our existence. It looks like this. We come into the world as a vessel, we have X amount of life, and we begin to live. Here's the difference. Rather than using up that life force little by little by little until we deplete it at some unspecified date, what the science is showing us is that life is cyclic, and that's true within our bodies. That life is, we can rejuvenate and regenerate the life in our bodies rather than using it up. It's the difference between a linear model and a cyclic model. So in a cyclic model, we are constantly replenishing the vessel. And there are many ways to replenish the vessel, and I'm going to talk about that in the program. But the science is showing us very clearly. DNA, for example, we know that DNA repairs and rejuvenates itself about every 2 weeks. We know that the brain rejuvenates itself in about 1 year, about 65 days. All of the cells have actually regenerated themselves within that period of time. The muscles in our bodies, our bones, every organ, each organ has a different cyclic period. So what the science is showing us, Steve, is that every organ in the human body now has been documented with the ability to heal and repair, or repair and heal itself. Even the organs we were told could not: spinal cord tissue, pancreatic tissue, heart tissue, brain tissue. The key is they must be given the right environment. The right environment for that cyclic repair and rebuilding to occur. Now, when I say environment, what does that mean? Could be the external environment. That's typically what people think of, and that is important. You know, fresh air, the water that we bathe with and ultimately we take into our bodies, that's all important. There's a nutritional environment. What is it that we use to nourish our food? Do we give ourselves, this is a key question. When we sit down to eat, do we eat to stop being hungry, or do we eat to furnish ourselves with the highest quality of nutrition that is available in that moment in time? It's a fundamental question that each of us owe it to ourselves to ask. And the way we answer that question determines that part of that internal environment. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs, the energetic environment. Many different ways of thinking of the environment. The point is that rather than accepting this linear way of thinking about life, that we lose some of that life every day, and that each year we have less and less and less of a component of life. If we can begin thinking in terms of the cyclic nature of the environment, and what that means, to me, this is really good news. It means if you've got something happening in your body and you don't like what's happening in your body, you can teach the DNA, you can reprogram that DNA. The science that supports this is called epigenetics. Now, what I'm sharing with you goes beyond what a scientist, an epigenetic scientist may say, because they're looking at petri dishes and they're looking at controlled laboratory environments. I'm working with shamans, curanderos, healers, mystics who have used these principles for 5,000 years in recorded human history. They don't know the science, but they know how to apply these principles in their lives, and they know how to embrace these deep truths of human existence. So, Steve, I believe that we are living in a time, because the world is changing so quickly, we owe it to ourselves to draw upon every iota of information that is honest. This is the key. Truthful, honest, factual information. We owe it to ourselves to draw upon everything that we have, to cross those traditional boundaries between science and spirituality and indigenous wisdom and mysticism, where it makes sense to cross those boundaries, because in nature, those boundaries don't exist. Nature doesn't know the difference between biology and geology and chemistry and physics. Nature doesn't know the difference between the healing that's possible and the healing that exists, because it's all part of a continuum. So when we begin to think differently, and again, I'm going to keep coming back to this, the whole point of this program for me is honest, truthful, factual discoveries, information that helps us, gives us the reason to think differently about ourselves and our relationship to the world. And then once we know it's there, we can draw on it when we need it. But I'm just going to give a caution, Steve, to our viewers, a heads up. Once you have seen the new discoveries, once you have seen the new information, you cannot unsee them. So by witnessing, by watching these programs, by watching this series, when you make new discoveries about yourself, that's where your workshop begins. Because at that moment, you have to say, either I'm going to discount what I've heard, or I'm going to make room for what I've heard in my life. I'm going to change the way I think about myself, my relationships, my relationship to money, my relationship to my body, my relationship, my most intimate and romantic relationships. It all comes down to the way we think about ourselves and solve our problems. We're offering a smorgasbord of new tools to be able to do that. And this is one of the places where I think this all comes to bear upon our lives today. So you can't separate your life today from what's happening in the world out there. It's all in the mix. And as we embrace the new tools, the changes don't look nearly as scary. The better we know ourselves, the better equipped we are to deal with whatever life brings to our doorstep. And that's the whole point.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we've really set the table here, I think, Gregg. Thank you.
Our lightning round, is our lightning round finished now?
Oh man, lightning round is finished now. We're gonna segue over into our new program, this collaboration of months and months and months. But let me just say, let me say a few things first. First, for thank you. That was terrific. These things that we've just talked about, and also congratulations again on Human by Design. It's just a
thank you.
Very powerful and important book. So let's talk about now this program that we've created, this 8-week master's program. Sure. I'll go ahead and share the name of it. So drum roll, please, here. It's called The Science of Self-Empowerment, Cellular Consciousness, Heart Intelligence, and the Untold Human Story. So we'll unpack that. We'll talk about that. But I want to just say that for me, what this is it's a map based on science, peer-reviewed science, to this individual and collective journey that is so important on the earth right now. And It's not only a map and a journey, but it's with, I'm going to call it Sherpas. Gregg, Bruce Lipton, Deborah Rosman, and Howard Martin as our Sherpas that are, you know, climbing us to this mountaintop where we can really live in an empowered and just super fulfilling way. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. But Gregg, let me, you know, we've been working on this for months. We've been collaborating. Just your off the top, you know, kind of thoughts, and then we'll actually, I'm going to share screen in a little bit. We'll actually go and look at the program page and talk a little bit about it. But first, just your thoughts on this collaboration.
Well, my first thought is I've been called many things and never a Sherpa, and I like this because I do love to climb mountains, and the higher the better. So I am really honored to be a Sherpa among the Sherpas. Steve, could you do me a favor? That is such an awesome title. Would you please read that title one more time?
I will. Yeah. And boy, let me also, I want to give credit where credit's due. This literally has been a many month collaboration, and Gregg, working with Bruce Lipton, also with our heart math leaders, Deborah Rosman and Howard Martin, they actually helped refine the title, because we had a little different title, but it's called The Science of Self-Empowerment, Cellular Consciousness, that's Bruce Lipton, Heart Intelligence, that's Heart Math, and The Untold Human Story, and that's Gregg. And you know, as you know, we spent weeks, you all did, just coming down on this name, which is beautiful, because this is exactly what this 8-week master's program is about. So you know, let me throw this over to you, Gregg, just to talk about your own wisdom and intuition and the things that surfaced that guided you to this name.
Yeah, well, thank you for reading that again. And you know, I put myself in the place of our community because I'm one of you. I'm a student of life. I'm a student of the new discoveries. And if I were you sitting there behind a computer and I saw this course offered, the first thing that I would look at is the title, and what does that title mean to me? And where this really came to bear for me personally, Steve, you know, I'm accustomed to doing programs all by myself. I've done, you know, courses by myself, multi-week courses. Bruce Lipton has, Heart Math has as well. What makes this program a little bit different, this isn't a Gregg Braden course. It's not a Bruce Lipton course. It is a convergence of what Gregg and Bruce and Deborah Rosman and Howard Martin and the Heart Math folks, what we found, but we're bringing it together. We'll each have our own portion, of course, but we're collaborating to bring a story. And it is a new human story that we are sharing. And I think this is what's so powerful. You know, Scott Turow, an American author, he said, who are we? Who are we? But the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and believe. That's the key. What is the story that you tell yourself about who you are? Your relationship to your body, your relationship to the earth, the relationship to the past, to the future, to the cosmos, to a higher power. Consciously and subconsciously, what story do you tell yourself that's been instilled from your community, from your family, from your religion, from your educational background, from the textbooks, from the science, the very science that we're talking about right now? New discoveries have overturned 150 years of scientific thinking on the one hand. On the other hand, we are still, maybe not you and me when I say we, but our society is still teaching obsolete science to our young people in the classroom today. We're leaving a world of change to our young people, and we're asking them to solve it through the same thinking that led to the problems that we're seeing today. It makes no sense at all. So this is why this title, it was important for me to offer a title that was honest about what each of us would be doing, yet gave us the latitude to cover a lot of new ground. And I'll tell you one of the things that happened, Steve, between the time you and I started talking about this and when I'm actually recording these modules, new discoveries have already come to light. And because of the way we created the title, I can incorporate those new discoveries and still honor the title. So that's a little bit about the title. Can I talk a little about this course, my portion of it, Steve?
Yeah, if you want, I'll start sharing screen so that
Well,
so people can see.
I want to see what the screen's going to say.
Yeah, here we go. So you can see.
So, yeah, one of the things that I've learned, I'm going to speak directly to our listeners. In the 33 years that I've been doing this work in one form or another, everyone learns differently, but one of the things I've learned is that our audiences have become much more sophisticated, Steve, than they were even a few years ago. And because of that, my sense is we don't have to go back to ground zero and re-explain everything that we do. And I've also discovered that we can be much more concise. So the way this program is laid out, these aren't lengthy lectures. These are 15-minute, very concise, very impactful, very compelling visual explorations of the discoveries, and then my opportunity to share what these discoveries have meant in my life, how I apply them in my life, so that our viewers can maybe say, you know, if Gregg applied it in his life this way, maybe it will mean something similar to me in mine. This comes when it comes to meditations and healings, when it comes to the way super learning, super resilience, all the things we're going to talk about. So I don't want listeners to think that they're going to have to commit to a long, drawn-out lecture. I wanted this to be visual, so it is a very highly visual component, but these are 15-minute information-packed segments, along with the personal experience that gives meaning to those segments. Remember, I said earlier, science can only tell us how things work, and it's up to us to apply those things in our lives. I'm using that model, both the left and the right brain, the science that tells us what the new discovery is, and then how I've applied that discovery in my life. So in the time we have remaining, Steve, I'm just going to run through. I've got 8 segments. Are you okay? Can I run through these really quickly?
Yeah, I've got them on the screen. Perfect.
Oh, okay. Well, here they are. So my first segment, I am going to talk about the new human story beyond Darwin's idea of evolution. And when people hear this, they think, Gregg, you know, Darwin, 1859, survival of the strongest, maybe he was wrong. What difference does it make? This surprises a lot of people. The biggest issues, the social issues that are tearing the fabric of our families, our relationships, our society, and our nation apart are based upon the way we've been taught to think about ourselves. And a lot of that comes from Darwin's theories proposed about 150 years ago. It tells us nature is based upon conflict, struggle, scarcity, and competition. We now know that is not true, that nature is actually based upon cooperation and mutual aid. And the more of that struggle and competition you see, that tells us how far off the mark we are from nature's truest, the truest model that nature is offering to us. I'm struggling a little bit because I don't want to get too much into the program here. So I'm just going to say that new discoveries have overturned all of that. New discoveries have overturned the idea that we are the product of Darwin's idea of evolution. The DNA studies are showing us that humans appeared on Earth suddenly 200,000 years ago, that we did not evolve slowly, gradually over long periods of time. This is what the DNA is telling us, very different from what I was taught to believe. Evolution is a fact in nature. It breaks down when it comes to humans. And I want to share with you what those new discoveries are. I'm going to show you very, very precisely. That's the first module. The second one, I want to talk to you about the biological path to human potential. We are embracing just a fraction of the potential that is available to us as we learn to harmonize and bring systems of our bodies into coherence. All right? I know that may sound complex to some people. I'm just going to make it very, very simple. When we go through life, we may function on autopilot and we can get by, or we can embrace the ability that no other form of life can embrace. It's called self-regulation. We are the only form of life that can sit down in a moment in time and say, in this moment, I choose to enhance my longevity enzymes. I choose to enhance my resilience, to create tremendous resilience to change my life. I choose to embrace my deep states of intuition, my super learning, my ability for super learning, and all of these things We're the only ones that can do that. And I'm going to talk about this in module number 2, the maximum human potential.
And Greg,
Optimizing.
share real quick, because just like maybe another minute or two, and then I want to
Sure.
just scroll this whole screen so people can, before the hour's up, can see just the big picture real well.
All right. So these are, I'm just giving you in these first 2 modules, the level of depth that we're going to go into. Let me share what the rest of the modules are here. Deep intuition on demand. How do we create that intuition when we want it and when we need it, rather than allowing life to bring it to us when it is convenient for life to do so? Mirror neurons and super learning. We talked about that a little bit in this program. How do we activate? How do we embrace the power of those mirror neurons? The mystery and meaning of the gamma brain state. There now is an additional brain state beyond what we were led to believe in our textbooks in the past, that allows us to embrace brain potential in ways that sound like science fiction, but it is science faction. It's science faction. It is science fact, and it is awesome. I'm making up new words as we go here, Steve. That's the gamma brain state. We've talked about cyclic healing. I'm going to go into depth about what are the parameters, what are the nutritional parameters, what are the environmental parameters that help with the cyclic healing. And we're going to bring all this together in the last module, and heart math comes in with this as well, because when we optimize the systems in the human body, that's good for us. But what I didn't say is we're actually harmonizing with natural systems that are good for the planet. They are good for our communities, good for our societies. They bring about peace, cooperation, and if we could ever use that, I can't think of a better time than right now. So let's just very quickly give you a sense of what these 8 weeks are going to be about. I'm very excited. I've never offered this material in this way before, and so that challenge has been exciting for me to be able to bring this together in a very concise way, in a new way that's meaningful and impactful for you. Hopefully it'll help you in your life. So Steve,
Sure.
that's what I'm going to say about this.
Yeah, no, beautiful. And let me just share, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down the program page. By the way, viewers, if you want, and Garth Catterall is going to put up a slide in just a little bit, not right now, Garth, but notice at the top here, it's programs.humanitiesteam.org/science-program/. We're sending out an email to you here, even as we speak. You're going to get a few emails that'll give you links so you can come back to the screen, but if anybody wants to make note of it, you can. So here it is, the science of self-empowerment, cellular consciousness, heart intelligence, and the untold human story. This is a brand new, it's actually an 8-week master's program. You'll see that change to the page.
I saw that 9 weeks and I thought maybe I missed a week somewhere.
Yeah, we candidly, we've gone back and forth. I'm not gonna get into the details, but people, as we talk to people said if we could get it into 8 weeks, it'd be great. So it is 8 weeks. But also I want to mention, I'm going to scroll down and you'll see this, but I want to just mention it now. Truly, the instructor team are Sherpas because they're actually each doing mentoring sessions. So Gregg has a mentoring session, Bruce has a mentoring session, and then Howard Martin and Deborah Rosman have mentoring sessions also. So as you're going through this program in the 8 weeks, you're going to be coming into their mentoring sessions where they're going to be asking you, so how's it working for you? Take me through your successes and challenges. What are areas where you are challenged and how can I help you? So that's a part of this program. Let's go ahead and scroll this real quick. There's a lot here, so it's a quick scroll. The first program up, the first 8 modules are with Bruce Lipton. He's doing a course webinar as part of this series also to talk about his program here, his 8 modules. Then Gregg's program, The Untold Human Story, is up next. By the way, Bruce's is called Cellular Consciousness, and then The Untold Human Story is Gregg's. And then the third 8 modules in this series is Heart Intelligence, and that's Deborah Rosman and Howard Martin. You can read a lot more about them. Here are some of the things that you'll get out of this program, this 8-week program. Then we actually get into the modules. You can read about each of these modules, all 24 of them here. I'm just going to scroll them. This is where just a moment ago Gregg took you through his 8 modules, but you can actually scroll all 24 and read and understand in some depth what this program is about at the beginning. Here is the discussion of the live mentoring program. So the Sherpas be talking about our personal experience and doing live coaching with people. There's a private Facebook page, MP3 audios for each module. Viewers like to have these bonus collection items. So, thank you in advance to Gregg, Bruce, and the HeartMath people for these bonus programs. Bruce Lipton on the Biology of Belief video, The Soul of Love from Bruce, Awaken the New Species in You, which is Barbara Marks Hubbard, Bruce Lipton, and then Awaken the New Species in You, Barbara Marks Hubbard with Nassim Harriman. Now, there's, we like to do this. We've created bonus items that if you order this program today, it's $297. You'll see that in a moment. It's the 8-week master's program. It's $297. If you order it today or by midnight tomorrow night, we're just throwing in these two bonus items here. The first one is Oneness in Your Life and Business. It's this workshop with Gregg, Braden, and myself. This deeply informative 90-minute video workshop is especially valuable if you own your own business or have thought about starting one. But during this workshop, Gregg will be sharing so much more about bringing higher consciousness and oneness perspectives into the way you operate in your daily life, that this workshop will profoundly affect and enrich you regardless of whether you own your own business. Gregg and myself also teach about recent radical innovations in business markets and show you how you will benefit in multiple ways from being part of the rising global resolve to confront the looming economic crisis and engage more sustainable and progressive practices. So that's one of the bonus items that's for registrations today and to tomorrow at midnight. The other one is the Science and Oneness program that Gregg and I filmed. It's a 60-minute program that dives into the fascinating topic of science and oneness, and Gregg and myself explore the compelling evidence for oneness some of the most recent laboratory studies have uncovered. We also share the evidence provided by the study of the human body, the natural world, and global events, and how they address the relationship between competition and collaboration in our human nature, and how this impacts our evolution as a species. So these are the two programs that are available here. These bonus items are kind of special bonus items that we've set apart for registrations today and tomorrow at midnight. You can see then the price, there's the normal 50% off here. So the price is $297 for this 8-week program. And these are all of the things that you receive when you sign up for the program. So you can see the special discounted price is $297. So we do think this is a life-changing opportunity. We haven't seen a program like this, which is why we went out to Gregg, Bruce, and the HeartMath leaders to design this. We think that it will slingshot you beyond limiting beliefs to an incredible new lifestyle. And we believe this can happen collectively as well. It's what Gregg's work is about, humanity's team's work is about, Bruce's and HeartMath, is that we can live something way beyond the the standard framework in the mainstream of what living is today. We have got then a guarantee here, of course, for 2 weeks. There's a full money back guarantee. Let me just say, Gregg and I are going to stay on to answer your questions. So we're going to come on live. So those of you that have questions, stick around, and Gregg and I are going to get to your live questions here in just a moment. Gregg, are you good as we move from this program to the next?
I'm good to go. I'm happy to be here, Steve.
All right, let me stop share screen here. So thank you, brother. Yeah, fabulous here, spending the hour with you. And Gregg and I are going to move over now to a live session with you here for your Q&A. Thanks for spending time with us here this Tuesday evening. Take care, everybody. Namaste.